Summer on the Mount series. If I haven't met you before, or maybe it's your first Sunday here, my name is Brandon. I'm the lead pastor here at Anchor Point. And all summer, we have been in a series called Summer on the Mount, which is this really creative way to just re-express spending the summer on the Sermon on the Mount. And so I know we're super creative. But in our Summer on the Mount series, we've been going through this amazing, perfect, beautiful sermon from Jesus himself. There's been some great sermons out there before. I know most of them in this church that you've heard before, right? But if Jesus is going to stand up on a mountain and preach, man, we should listen. And what a gift, guys, what a gift. Every week we've talked about the gift that this was kept for us. That this was in God's ordination, kept and protected and shared so that today we could close our eyes and set ourselves on that mountain and hear this sermon. And so throughout this Sermon on the Mount series, what Jesus has been doing is essentially saying, hey, I'm wanting to invite you into my kingdom. But I need to share with you how to do that. And to share how to do that, I also need to share with you what that looks like. Because I want you to be able to recognize that my kingdom, the kingdom of God, is different than any other kingdom that you've ever heard of or ever thought existed or should exist. And so constantly throughout this series, he's saying things like, you may have heard it said this way. But I tell you, in my kingdom, it's like this. And so constantly we're giving these examples. We're saying, you might say, in your kingdom, it's eye for an eye. Be sure that if someone offends you, you offend them to the same level back so that everything's even, and that's how it should be in the court of law. Jesus says, in my kingdom, I tell you to turn the other cheek. And to allow grace and mercy to be the foundation in which you build your relationships off of. Not to say we don't speak truth, is what we talked about a couple weeks ago. That we do speak truth and we say what Jesus says is true, but when we're doing that according to the kingdom rules of Jesus, which is in mercy and grace and humility and patience. And so he's rewriting the book of hey, the world has said this, but let me tell you, the only kingdom that's going to be here when things end is my kingdom, and here's how things work in my kingdom. Part of us understanding the difference between the world, how the world says it works and how Jesus says he has ordained it to work, is all these battles that we make in our culture here and now today. We, for example, have a culture of wanting the most value for the least cost, right? Like Amazon exists so that you can get things fast, easy, cheap. But then when we get it, we also want it to be the same top quality. Right? And so we want it fast, easy, and cheap. Or fast, quality, and cheap. But we also want it easy. I've been involved in some different trades over my life and primarily doing some remodels and things. And one of the things you hear from clients very often is them being like, hey, so I want this done. My budget is the bottom line budget, but I want it super nice. I want it done in 2 weeks. Right? And I want you to get in, get out. I want it to be perfect. I don't want there to be any problems. I want it to be really cheap. You have to have conversations with people that's not the reality of this world. You can have two of those things. You want it fast and cheap? It's not going to be very good. You want it good and fast? It's not going to be cheap. Right? And so you can follow that pattern out. But even though our world says this is what we want, when we try to put it in practical application, can't find it. And so that already should be this red flag somewhere in us to say, hey, what I'm seeing out there, what someone is trying to tell me is true, when I try to put it into application, I'm finding some inconsistencies. So maybe there's something else going on here. So I said we want it cheap, fast, and quality. The other thing we admire in our culture is easy. Outside of just tasks or things that we buy, we all want a well-paying job that is easy to get and easy to do. Isn't that the American dream? I just want to be paid a lot of money to do a little bit of work. I don't want to try very hard to get the job. That's like the American, we did it, if you could find that. Anybody found that? Please, if you share the workload out there if you figured it out and people are looking. We want easy, we want best, deep friendships or relationships that are just so easy they don't require any effort. That's what our world, our culture tells us. You can have these things, and if it's good, it's easy. but I think we find inconsistencies if we try to build those relationships. They're anything but easy. We have this basically win the lottery mentality. If everything could just be made easy for me in a moment, then everything would not just be easy, it would be better. And I think that's the lie that so many of us will. You do it cheap and you do it fast. You don't always get quality. Let's see here. Okay, so culturally, to kind of prove this point, some of us may not be old enough to remember that. That's okay. But there's this business called Staples that came out with this big campaign called the Easy Button. And that was the whole thing. They put out all these commercials of these people in these complex work situations, and they just slide this button over to them, and they hit the button, and the button would go, well, that was easy. And it was even this thing, like you could buy a little replica of the button and keep it on your desk and just be like, boom, well, that was easy. And there's some fascination with life really working that way. What's the shortcut? What's the magic wand? What's the secret sauce? What's the self-help that I can jump into that is easy and will make life better? Fast, cheap, quality, and easy is damaging to our understanding of what real value is. And we begin to place unnecessary and untrue appreciation for cheap things instead of valuable things. Because how many times have I ordered the cheap version because it would get here faster, was promised to do the same thing as the expensive version, only to have it fail and wear out almost immediately. I think the reality is this whole conversation of cheap, easy, fast, quality from our culture seeps its way into our faith understanding of who Jesus is if we're not careful. And we start to put our faith to the same standards that the world says we should operate by. And we start to look at Jesus and go, well, Jesus, if you're not going to do this quickly and easily, with the same quality, then I don't want it. Or, if this is going to be hard, it can't be good. And the secret that our culture doesn't want us to know is exactly what Jesus is going to point out today, and as he consistently points out in Scripture, is that good doesn't mean easy. And everything that he came to do is good. But none of it was easy. Everything that he can call us to, but it certainly won't be. So Jesus meets us in this place, in this tension, in our world, and in his kingdom to bring a conclusion to the sermon series, and this is where he meets us. Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 13. Matthew 7, starting in verse 13. Jesus says, "Enter through the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the road is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many people who go through that gate and down that road." Verse 14 says, "How narrow, though, is the gate and how difficult the road that leads to life, and few find it." So a few things right here as we enter into the conclusion of his whole sermon. We have two gates, each that lead to its own road. The wide gate with the wide road, or the narrow gate to the difficult road. And Jesus starts this verse with an imperative, a command. Enter the narrow gate. Jesus is not just describing that there are two gates or suggesting that there's two things out there. He is commanding for those who hear to enter through the narrow gate. Simply said, Jesus does not just point out that there are two roads. He commands us to enter the narrow gate. So then, if that's the command and those are the options, why do so few people choose the narrow gate? Well, for one, the gate is, in its essence, in the language used to describe this gate, it is narrow, it is straight, it is direct, it is singular. Now, we've heard gate language other places in Scripture. The one who opens the gate, the one who is the gate, the one who sits at the gate. In this case, very confidently, the narrow gate is Jesus. And the straight, direct, singular, narrow essence of the gate is to say there's one way through this gate, and that's Jesus. And that's it. There's no wiggle room to the left or to the right. There's no other gates or alleyways. There's no other way around. If you want down this road that leads to life, there's one gate, and the one gate is Jesus Christ. Pretty bold and confident claim, but one that should be bold and confident from God himself speaking to man about the way to life. But in our culture, we take that and we go, well, we can't really just do this. There's always more than one way, right? There's always more than one way to do things. And there should be another thing. And like, surely Jesus doesn't have a monopoly on life. He does. He absolutely does. He is the maker, creator, and sustainer of all things. He certainly can tell us the way to find life. And the only way to find it, he's begging us to understand, is through one gate. Everything else, everything that is not Jesus is the wide gate. Everything else that promises life and hope and joy and meaning and purpose and identity, everything else that's not Jesus is this wide gate, which is why so many people choose to go through it rather than the narrow gate. Because the second thing is we love to be in control. Who do we trust more than ourselves? Most of the time, we trust ourselves more than anyone else. I know what is right for me. We like to get to this situation where Jesus is saying, choose, and we're like, well, I don't think that's good for me. I think to keep my options open is the better thing. And just as we don't like to choose, we like to be in control. That's why so many people choose this wide road, because it's a road where you get to maintain control. You get to be in charge on the wide road. You get to do what you want to do and say what you want to say and go where you want to go. And that is so appealing to so many people in this world, is why they flock to the wide gate. Because, see, we're told that not only is the narrow gate singular through Jesus, but we're also told that that road is difficult. I love the language here. We're going to learn a Greek word today. We don't do that all the time. We're going to learn it today. The word narrow here is the word difficult. Some translations, like the CSB, say difficult. Other translations say narrow again. But it's not the same narrow as used before to say singular individual. This word is the Greek word phlebo. I'm not listening. Let's put it up there. Everybody say phlebo. Phlebo. You did it. You learned one. The meaning behind this word is like that of a wine press. You put in this fruit, this grape, and then you start cranking the wheel, and you start putting pressure and crushing and forcing and making this thing into something else. It's great force. It's great pressure. And that's the word that he chooses to use when he talks about the narrow road. Another place that might bring this into context for us is in Mark 9. Jesus is preaching, very similar to this passage, to a lot of people. And the people just keep crowding in and getting closer and closer and closer to Jesus. And he looks at his disciples. He's like, we got to get in a boat and back up. Because if I don't, the crowd is going to crush us. The word crush is the word used in the CSB translation. Crush. What do you think that word is in Greek? Phlebo. The word for narrow road or difficult road is one that comes with this idea of great pressure and force and It's not just to squeeze in and go on about our life. Once through the gate, once through the gate, it comes with great pressure that can even feel pressure. Many people don't choose this narrow gate because they prefer the cheap, fast, and easy way, the way of most comfort, the way of most convenience. But Jesus is warning us right now that that way leads to destruction. And I can prove it. Because we can all prove it if we're honest. Our world tells us things like, do whatever makes you happy and comfortable. If you're not happy and you're not comfortable, you need to do something else. But then we try to make ourselves happy and comfortable, and we start to find some comfort there, right? Because no matter what we find, it seems like it doesn't quite make us happy and comfortable. Our culture tells us to pursue your peace. Whatever makes you sleep good at night is what you need to do. Whatever gives you the least amount of tension throughout your day, do that. And anything that brings that up, you just cut it out. And it's not peaceful. And so we try to do that. And we have trouble finding peace. Put yourself first. Do what's right for you. And then everything will work out. Don't worry about other people. Don't worry about everything. You put yourself first. Do what you need to do. And then you do that, and you still find yourself lacking. We go further into relationship things, or just be with friends with people who make us feel comfortable, or even in like romantic relationships, sleep with whoever you want to, wherever you want, whenever you want, watch whatever you want on media. Take in lustful things. It doesn't hurt anyone. And we live that way, and we find ourselves greatly discontent. And beyond that, I would say I'd multiply all of these things out as we live in this way, trying not to worry about the consequences because we're doing what is best for us. What we find culturally is we have never lived in a season where there is more anxiety, depression, suicide, anger, fear, confusion, and general brokenness in the world that we live in right now. Do you see that, or is it just me? It can't be working, can it? We've never had more freedom to do whatever we want to do, ever, than we do right now. And look around us. Identify however you want, live however you want, do whatever you want, live your freedom, live your peace. All love is love. How is all of that love leading us to actual love? It's not. And that's what Jesus is trying to warn us is, listen, wide gate, wide road, but I'm trying to tell you now where it goes. Which is why I'm begging you to enter through the narrow. Here's the thing about the narrow gate. With Jesus, the price that he paid was the price we could never pay. There's nothing, guys, nothing. Think of something. Nothing. Not even that. Nothing that we could do to earn our salvation. We were destined to chain ourselves to sin and to sink to the bottom of it. But Jesus so loved that he came, he paid the price that we couldn't pay, and he made a way. He opened the gate. Where everything else fails, he says, I am. He offers the gift freely, but it is not a cheap gift. We got to understand the difference. It is free to those who call on the name of Jesus for salvation and rescue, not based on who you've been or what you've done or anything that you could ever be or do. But it's not a cheap gift. It is a priceless. It is of great value, and things of great value still have their cost. Now, the cost we perceive is damaging to us. But in the upside-down kingdom of Jesus, he's saying the cost is actually to let go of all the things that are damaging to you. And let me fill you with the things that will make you whole. That's a pretty good cost, right? It's like taking you out to a really nice dinner and saying, I'm going to pay for it, order whatever you want. It's free, but it's not cheap. I love this picture. I got two pictures for us. One is this old illustration of wide road, narrow road. And I just think, just like to get it in our mind, we see it. And what it makes me think of is like being in old places and out in tourism, and like you're seeing all of the people go towards one direction. And it's in our nature to be like, well, there must be something good down there. Everybody's going. Nobody's over here. Everybody's over here. Let's go see what's going on. And it draws us in. And there's many people taking all of those things in this direction. What Jesus is prophesying out is at the end of that road, which is hard to see there, is this big, massive flame that essentially everyone is walking into because they've been convinced that that is the right way to go. Where over here you have this narrow path and this narrow gate. And through it, I love the imagery of them taking up their cross and choosing to follow Jesus, to die to their old selves and to live in the life that Jesus has fought for them on the cross. And you see this long, winding, narrow road. And I think about standing in that place and looking at that road on a vacation somewhere and being like, I didn't wear the right shoes for this. It's a little hot. This looks, I can get where, I bet there's something really cool at the end of this for me to take a picture of. That looks really uncomfortable and inconvenient. But I've been promised that this is the one that leads to life. Now we see this next picture. Same gate. Same kind of serious tone. Seems very dark and gloomy. I see a little bit of humor in it. Because I see this guy standing closest to the gate, pointing at it, being like, hey, you found the narrow gate. You ready to go? And the guy's like, yeah, I'm ready. And it may be hard to see, but this guy is like burdened with stuff. He has on all his robes and cloak and heavy gear, shoeless, small little robe thing. This guy's like boots and gear and robe and all the things in the hat, and he's got his arms full of stuff and wealth and things he's taking. And he's like, I'm geared up, I'm ready, put me through the narrow gate. And the guys look at him and go like, dude, I'm so glad you're here, but that's not going to fit. Like, size it up. You're not going to make it. If you're going to take all that into there, it's not going to fit. And he's like, but the good news is, if you trust me, you're not going to need it. If you want to walk through this gate, it's going to be hard, and you're going to have to leave all that stuff here. But on the other side, it's not going to serve you anymore like it did before you walked through the gate. You're here for a reason. All of that stuff couldn't take you where you wanted it to take you. And that's what brought you to the gate of Jesus. Now it says, I want you, I'm begging you. I can walk through the gate, but you can't take that with me. We have to be careful that we're not guilty of thinking that we are following Jesus when we're actually just sitting at the gate with all of our worldly possessions and ideas in our hand, trying to barter with Jesus about what's better. Jesus is like, you're not going to need it. Yeah, but Jesus, my identity really matters to me. And if I could just have my identity and also follow you in this one, it doesn't serve you on the side. You have my identity. That's all you need. Yeah, but Jesus, if I could just bring my comfort with me, like I get social anxiety and it makes me really uncomfortable to do things like he does. I get it, but that doesn't serve you in the side. And I'll be with you, and if you do hard things, I'll do them with you. And we could go down that list of all the things, our pride, our relationships, or whatever, and we go to the gate and we go, all right, God, but if you just let me through with just a few things. Pick up my cross and follow me as die to all of that. Not that you can't have it. Who knows what's on the other side? You may end up with way more than you ever thought you'd had, or way less than you ever thought you deserved. The understanding and trust in our faith is whatever I have over there, Jesus is with me, and that's more than I deserve, and it's more than I need. We can also try to interpret this as an opportunity to take the really wide road as long as we possibly can, and at the last minute, jump on in and sneak through the narrow gate. God, I'm just going to keep doing whatever I'm doing. It's working for me right now. I'm experimenting. I'm finding stuff out in life. I'm going to discover who I am. And if it doesn't quite work out, then maybe I'll jump over real quick at the end, and then I'll take your road until I die. And that's a common ideology in this world that says you don't have to choose right now. Take your time. Wide road, you're okay. You never change your mind down the road. Circle back in the time. That's not what Jesus says. He urges, he commands, enter the narrow gate because the narrow gate leads to life. And the sooner you recognize that, the better your entire life will be. Not easier, but certainly better. Life on the wide road is what the enemy is trying to convince us is life. While Jesus is saying that true life can only be found in him and only fully experienced at the end of the narrow road. Listen, the major fault with the idea of I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and see if that'll work out, and if not, then maybe I'll give it to God, is that we have this really false idea that we're promised tomorrow. We all kind of live in this untouchable state of mind of bad things happen to other people, but they don't happen to me until they do. And we got people right now in our church body suffering through things that they never thought they would suffer through. And it wasn't like they had a year to prepare. Literally, left church, life changed forever. I hope you've got so many days left. I hope you do. But the reality is each and every one of us sit in a place where we will walk out of this building and we're not in control of what happens next, whether we are in Christ or not. And this is not to create fear in your heart. Jesus' desire is not to guilt you or oppress you or fear you into a decision. What he's trying to show you is that there's a real choice to be made, so you better get serious about what choice you're making. You don't take the narrow gate because it's going to lead us to the wealth and riches and easy life. You take the narrow gate because it's the only way to life, and we recognize that. We take the narrow gate because we've lived on the wide road long enough to know that it's not taking us where we want to go. Instead of give it another year, give it another year, give it another year, what if I decided right now to figure out if the narrow gate's the one that I need to walk through? Because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. The promise though is the moment you walk through that narrow gate, no matter how hard the road is, and Jesus tells us it's going to be difficult. Wine press. It's going to be difficult. But it leads to life. And the minute you step onto that road, the promise and influence of Jesus Christ is he says, I have you. We'll come back to that in a minute. Here's what we're going to see. We choose the gate. We step through it. We're walking this life. And Jesus says, watch out. Because here's what's coming. Verse 15, he says, watch out for false prophets. What are false prophets? People who lie. People who try to say this is what Jesus says, but it's not what Jesus says. Pretty simple. And we boil it down to that. He says, they come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. Wolves in sheep's clothing. You hear that all the time. Jesus and these people try to come in and act like they're walking the narrow road, but their intention is to drive you off of it. Their intention is to consume and devour and destroy. Why does a wolf dress up like a sheep? To be friends with sheep? No, it's to get past all the guards and get past the shepherd and consume is their intention. And Jesus is warning us. He says, you're going to have people out there that are going to look like you, but they're not you. They're not on the narrow road. They have not walked through the narrow gate. They are not mine, and they're going to try to tell you all kinds of things about me that aren't true. And he says, watch out. So how will we know? How do we know when there's a wolf in sheep's clothing? Well, he tells us. He says, by their fruit, you will recognize them. He continues, he says, do people pick grapes from thorn bushes? Any green thumbs agriculturists out there, can you grow grapes from thorn bushes? No. The answer is no. I asked Evan emphatically in the last service, is that true? And he assured me, no, you cannot grow grapes from thorn bushes. He continues and he says, well, what about figs? Can you go pick figs from thistles? The answer is the same. No, they do not grow on thistles. He says, likewise, in verse 17, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every time that a tree does not bear good fruit, it is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Now, we can take fruit and we can turn fruit to action. Well, I need to be a good person. If I'm a good person, then I must be walking the narrow road because I'm being a good person. I'm doing good things, and they're doing bad things. And so they're on the wide road, but I'm doing good things, and so I'm on the good road. It's not what it's talking about. This kind of fruit, we see that language all throughout Scripture. And the language of that fruit is what we would call like Holy Spirit fruit. It is fruit that comes from a life that has been changed from the inside out, that is a new person, a new creation, a new identity, firmly rooted in Christ. Christ talks about he is the vine of life. And on the vine there are many branches. And we are the branches that grow the fruit that Jesus has put in us because of who he is. You can't fake it. You can't manufacture it. You can't create it outside of being attached to the vine. And so this fruit is not about doing good things, because Jesus himself, when asked, this guy's coming to Jesus looking for answers. He's like, hey, I don't know who you are, but I think you might have something to offer. You might be this good teacher or this good rabbi. And so he says, good teacher. He says, oh, hold on. Nobody's got anything good to offer but God. Now, if you're looking for God, you're going to find lots of good things. But if you're just looking for a person to show you what's good, there's nothing good but God. We see in other places in Scripture it says every good thing, every good gift comes from the heavenly Father of God. So when he's saying good trees produce good fruit, we could say God trees produce God fruit. Make sense? You can't do it. The only way to grow that kind of fruit is to be attached to him. And then when you're attached to him, truly your heart has been given to him and you're walking with him and you're on that narrow road and Jesus is living in you and through you and with you, you're not sitting there going, oh, grow good fruit. Oh, come on. Just a little. God grows it. And as we follow him, he puts these things in them like hope and love and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness. He puts those things in them. And they begin to live that way because it is Jesus living through them. He is so filled them with his goodness that it's pouring out of their life. That's the fruit on the narrow road. Now there's going to be all kinds of people that say, hey, I got what you need. You think first, if that sounds too good to be true, if it's picking a grape off a thorn bush, you've got to stop and reflect and go, where is Jesus in my life? Because if this is a shortcut or a way around, if the fruit of Jesus is not in this thing, if the Holy Spirit fruit is not in it, it's not God. So it's not good. And if it's bad, it's not God. And those things will be destroyed. We're on the same page there? Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Be aware, people are going to try to deceive you and lie to you and tell you all kinds of things that aren't true. This is why it's so important, if you have lost that narrative and you're following Jesus, that you actually spend time with Jesus. Why do you read your Bible? Because if you don't, you're a bad Christian. That's not true. Why do you read your Bible? Because that's what Jesus is. He is in this Word, living and breathing and wanting to speak to us and show us his goodness. We read our Bible to find Jesus. And in finding him, find everything else that we need in this life. Why do we go to church? Because if you don't, you're a bad person. No, we go to church because there's other people who are trying to find Jesus, meeting together to point each other towards Jesus. That's why those things are important. Why do we avoid the things that the flesh tells us are trying to weigh us down and tie us up and hold us to our old lives of sin? Because we want to make more room for Jesus. Getting rid of those things or taking on those things can't save us one way or the other, but Jesus can. He's the one that will change everything in our life. So more of him, please, is what we're looking for. And if they don't got him, we don't want anything to do with him. I don't care what you have to say. It's not Jesus. No matter how attractive it looks, it should raise questions when we find great symptoms. He continues. What else are we going to find on the road? He says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter my kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. He says, many will say to me on that day of judgment, Lord, Lord. And what I want to see us picturing is like running up to the gates of heaven. And, Jesus! Jesus, I'm here! That's what he's saying. That's the picture they're painting here. Jesus, I'm here. Lord, Lord. He says, many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles. And Jesus says, I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Man, if there's not a greater highlight and emphasis about it's not what you do, it's who you are. Jesus says, you can do all the right things. But doing all the right things on the narrow gate and on the wide gate and the wide road is still not walking with me. And if you never give your life to me to hold, then I'll never be able to protect it when the days are all said and done. You have the choice. You have the freedom. But let me make you aware of the consequences. If you trust me now, I will walk you into eternity. If you don't trust me, I will let you fall into whatever it is that you trust. And we'll see which one can protect you. Which is why we go back to that first verse where it says, so listen, beg me, walk through the narrow gate, because it's the one that leads to life. I think we need to be really careful about thinking that we follow Jesus because we're trying to be a good person. Or thinking that we follow Jesus because we're trying to be a good Christian. And examine our heart to see if we're actually following Jesus. While we're standing at the gates there, trying to barter our own way into eternity. Verse 24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew, and it beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Rock or sand? What's the thing they have in common in this illustration? What's the thing they have in common? Both of them experience storms. Right? Being on the rock does not save you from the storm. The storm's coming. Being on the rock means the storm won't destroy you. Being on the rock means no matter how bad the storm gets, there's life at the end of that storm. Being on the sand says the storm's still coming, and there's not going to be anything left when it's over. I watched this really silly show that I am mildly obsessed with and why I've called Alone. Anybody? Okay, my people. And the idea of Alone is they take these 12 people that are experts in the field of survival and they take them out in the middle of absolutely nowhere where they'll never see another person until they quit or they win. And the last one standing wins by money. Kind of cool, all right? I'm watching this season right now, and this lady is an expert in her field. And she starts building her shelter, and she's looking at the ground that's around them, and she's going, hey, this right here is full of rocks, really uncomfortable. Down here in this riverbed, though, it's sandy, softer. As long as it doesn't rain, I'm fine. We're not 10 days in. You want to know what happens? It rains. And it rains for like 5 or 6 days. And it shows her video in her campsite, and there's water like washing her stuff down and filling up, and her bed is wet. And in the middle of the night, she's trying to drag it up onto the shore and out. Because it's not going to rain, right? How many things do we build our life on? We're like, what's the worst that could happen? That's not going to happen to me. So it does. Because if it's not built on Jesus, it's built on the sand, and it's destined. It's destined, guys. Not might happen. Destined for destruction. But life is found for those who build their house on the rock. But when the rain comes, and when the streams rise, and when the winds blow, there the house remains. And Jesus will hold that house, your life, in his hands through every storm until the day that he comes back and makes everything perfect and right again. Until there are no more storms. The only way to that life and that truth is through giving our life to Jesus. False prophets, false believers, our old war with flesh against the things of Jesus, all the things calling us to build our house on things that will fade and wash away. Jesus does not fade. Jesus does not wash away. His words are always true, and is the only thing that leads to life. And then when Jesus had finished saying these things, it says in verse 28, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. Verse 29, it says, because he taught as one who had authority. I love this. And not as their teachers of the law. What's the difference between Jesus and the teachers of the law? It's easy. I'm not setting you up. What's the difference? He's Jesus. He is authority. He is God. He is the one who speaks all of these things into existence. He is the one who sustains, who created, who brought it all into being, and will wrap it all up in completion in eternity. He is the authority. The gate, the way to life is Jesus, and he is the authority. And we have got to root from our life any sense that there's any other way but that. We have got to root out of our life any sense that there is a truth other than Jesus. That there is a way to life other than Jesus. That anyone else, that anything else could come and die for us and provide an eternity and security and hope like Jesus. Only Jesus. I implore you as he did in his authority. If you're looking for life, choose the narrow route. Have faith. Trust me. And let me show you how to find life. The storm will come. Some of you are in it right now. He says, I'll be there. On my narrow road, no one gets washed away. And when it gets hard, which it will, he's better. And when it gets difficult, it forces us to become desperately dependent on God, and there's no better place to be. How aware are you of a lifeline, except for when you're in a storm? Right? You're at the pool and you're just floating, and you're not thinking about it. But when you're in the ocean, the waves have risen, and you've lost your strength to swim, you're looking for that lifeline. And you're saying, don't wait for them. Choose now. I am the lifeline.